Hi, it's Christina with the Sisyphean Journal. I don't have an anniversary today, so I'm going to listen to and react to a video um, posted yesterday. Could Florida's new abortion restrictions drive doctors away? Some Florida doctors who care for pregnant patients say they're struggling under the weight of abortion restrictions. They worry the new law could impact health care throughout the state. So they're asserting in this headline and in this little blurb that if you don't allow indiscriminate slaying of fetuses, um, it just endangers women. Let's see how it endangers women if you no longer allow indiscriminate slaying of fetuses.
After 8 years of building a career in Florida,
Yeah, I grew up in New Jersey, so I just tried to escape the cold in my life.
Dr. Lindsay Maggio, a maternal fetal medicine specialist, packed up her Orlando practice in August of 2023 and moved back to New Jersey.
There were social implications, financial implications. I mean, moving in and of itself is not easy. I have two small children. I loved being in Florida and practicing in Florida. It just got increasingly more challenging over the last couple of years to feel like I could safely do my job and offer the level of care that I wanted to offer patients.
Maggio says her decision to relocate was the result of Florida's increasingly restrictive policies on abortion since the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in 2022.
In my world, most people who are choosing to end a pregnancy are doing it after 15 weeks when they...
Okay, notice she says choosing to end a pregnancy. She's already being a weasel. There is a strong distinction between ending a pregnancy and killing the fetus deliberately. Okay, that's, my daughter had to have her pregnancies ended. She had gestational diabetes and they were concerned about possible placenta breakdown. So they induced labor. That ended the pregnancy. My best friend developed gestational lupus. They performed emergency C-sections. They ended the pregnancy. So she is equating ending a pregnancy. She's leaving out the dead baby part. And they do that a lot. If you look at the little blurb that YouTube puts under it, they say they use new words now. They change it. An abortion is a procedure to end a pregnancy. The purpose isn't to end the pregnancy, it's to dead the fetus. If you end the pregnancy with a live baby, that's a failed abortion and you're going to get sued, okay? It can be done two different ways. Medication abortion, which uses medicines to end the pregnancy. You use Pitocin to induce labor. That's using medication to end a pregnancy. There's a difference between ending the pregnancy and killing the baby. It is sometimes called a medical abortion or abortion with pills. Procedural abortion, they're no longer saying surgical abortion. Procedural abortion, a procedure to remove the pregnancy from the uterus, is sometimes called a surgical abortion. You cannot remove a pregnancy. A pregnancy is a state of being. That's like saying you're removing a puberty. Okay? Pregnancy is a state. The woman is pregnant. She is experiencing pregnancy. You can't remove a pregnancy. Okay? So YouTube has really upped their weaseling there. And again, they're leaving out the most salient point, which is it's not about ending the pregnancy. It's about ending the life of the unborn entity that was gestating. And okay, so she's doing abortions past 15 weeks. At that point, you're reaching in with forceps, grabbing arms and legs and twisting them off and crushing the little skull. Okay? When they get a little further along, and the baby's tissues start to firm up, they will do something. Typically, it's a chemical injection using similar drugs to what's used in executions. But in an execution, the condemned murderer is sedated and unconscious, and then they introduce paralytics and then the drug to stop the heart. In an abortion, that baby doesn't have any anesthesia, and the needle typically goes either into the heart or they put it through the soft spot into the brain. And this is a big enough needle to jab through the woman's abdominal wall, the muscles, the uterus. This is harpooning that baby with a great big needle. And then they leave the dead baby in there overnight so that the tissues soften up, kind of like leaving a chicken in a crock pot, so it's easier to take apart. Later on, they'll do the lethal injection and just induce labor. So this is past 15 weeks we're talking about. So let's see what she has to say.
I find a devastating genetic diagnosis or...
Okay, so a devastating genetic diagnosis. So the idea is you find out the baby's sick and you don't want the baby to live. Okay, this is not ending the pregnancy. This is, sometimes it's the woman who, you know, it feels overwhelmed and doesn't feel like she can cope with this diagnosis. Sometimes it's the doctor. Doctors go into obstetrics because they want to be part of this joyful introducing new babies to the world. They don't want to be part of helping these parents cope with this devastating news. And if you do the abortion, if you're the doctor, you do the abortion, it's over for you. You never have to think about that baby again or that mother for the rest of your life. That mother's going to be carrying that dead baby in her heart for the rest of her life, and she's going to have known she signed its death warrant. And there's also the fact that sometimes these diagnoses are wrong. You can never, you know, sometimes you have the baby and yes, the baby really is morbid, the baby's going to die. Use perinatal hospice, which is both before and after birth. You take comfort measures. You treat the baby like you would any other patient that has a serious condition. And you provide palliative care. And sometimes you find out that it's not so serious after all, or the tests were completely wrong and there was nothing wrong with the baby. But when you go ahead with an abortion, you are completely eliminating the possibility of having a good outcome. You are choosing to ensure the maximum tragedy, which is that no matter how severe this actually is, you get a dead baby. Okay? So she's talking about severe fetal abnormalities.
Birth defect.
Maggio left Florida when the state banned abortions after 15 weeks into a pregnancy. Since a 6-week ban took effect this month, OBGYNs who remain in Florida worry their ranks will dwindle even more.
Well, only the ones who want to kill babies. If you want to take care of pregnant women, you're not going to leave the state. A doctor who views that unborn baby as a valuable human being isn't going to flee Florida because he's suddenly not allowed to gratuitously kill fetuses anymore.
I can tell you that right now we are projecting quite a shortage of OBGYNs by 2030.
Dr. Rachel Humphrey is an OBGYN specializing in high-risk pregnancies.
Okay, so we're going to hear what she says about high-risk pregnancies. This is my friend who had the gestational lupus. High-risk pregnancies, yes, they can be very scary. What is she going to say?
Literally, bans like this have been shown to drive doctors away.
This has all.
Now, why would it drive doctors away? She doesn't say why. Okay, if the mother is having problems, you can induce labor. You can do a C-section. Why is it that you would want to take additional steps to first kill the baby? If this mother has health problems, why would you want to be performing an extra procedure, you know, with that amniocentesis needle and injecting drugs into the fetus that could potentially get into her bloodstream and cause her harm, or be reaching in there with forceps and poking around? Dilating the cervix enough to get these later babies out takes days. If these women have serious health problems, why would you, number one, want to drag ass for several days to get her dilated? And number two, why would you want to be poking sharp instruments around in her uterus? Why would you not want to just, why do you want to do that extra step to get a dead baby before ending the pregnancy?
Already played out in other states with more restrictive abortion laws. A report published this year by a collective of Idaho physicians.
Okay, so Idaho Physician Wellbeing Action Collaborative. That is a bunch of pro-abortion Idaho doctors. This is not talking to doctors who see the babies as important human beings. This is a consortium of doctors that see unborn babies as disposable. Keep that in mind.
Found that 22% of the state's obstetricians left Idaho during the 15-month period immediately following a ban on nearly all abortions.
They're not saying why.
When one Idaho hospital shuttered its labor and delivery unit last year, a spokeswoman cited the state's legal and political climate among the causes.
Suddenly we live in the day and age where doctors have to worry about what they do because they don't want to end up in prison.
No, you don't. No, you don't. There is a very distinct difference between jabbing an amniocentesis needle through the soft spot and injecting formaldehyde or something into that baby's brain and putting in an IV and putting in some Pitocin to induce labor. There's a huge difference between these two things. There's a big difference between just doing an emergency C-section and first doing something to kill the baby, pulling a cannellin and, cutting her open and then cutting the cord and holding the baby in the amniotic fluid until it drowns. There's a big difference between taking steps to save the mother and taking steps to kill the baby. And let me kind of give you a non-pregnancy scenario here. Imagine that a building has collapsed and somebody is trapped in the building, okay? There is a huge difference between you are trying to lift debris off this person and some of the debris might fall and they die, and just saying, well, it's going to be too tricky to get you out and putting a bullet in his head. Okay, you wouldn't be prosecuted for murder if you were trying to extract the person from that collapsed building and something went wrong and the debris fell and killed them, because your intent was to extract the person from the dangerous situation. Whereas if you went there and said it's going to be too hard to get you out alive and just shot him, that's murder. This is not some fine distinction where it's really hard to distinguish. This is something where politically they are trying to make it sound as if this is just this huge gray zone when it's not. There's a difference between inducing labor and sticking a amniocentesis needle into a baby's heart and pumping it full of digoxin. There's a difference. If you don't kill the baby before you induce labor, and it's not an abortion. Gosh, who would have thunk it?
Florida's law banning most abortions contains an exception if the mother's life is in danger.
And look at this, the law even allows you to deliberately kill the baby if the mother's life is in danger. So you're allowed to say, well, she prefers a dead baby to a premature baby. So in Florida, you're allowed to prefer a dead baby to a preemie and just have it killed. There's that loophole there.
Or to prevent a serious risk of substantial and irreversible physical impairment. Humphrey says she and her colleagues are being advised by lawyers to navigate what she calls confusing paperwork to comply with the new law in those situations.
Well, don't do the abortion. Deliver the baby. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to do that. You don't have to do any confusing paperwork if you don't kill the baby. If you just end the pregnancy without stopping and killing the baby first. So, this whole thing is they don't want to end the pregnancy unless they can end the pregnancy with a baby that has been killed first. So, if you just ended the pregnancy without killing the baby, you wouldn't have any problems.
That's just insane that any lawyer would be making those types of decisions, right?
Adriana Gonzalez is a lawyer in Palm Beach County. She specializes in medical malpractice litigation.
Anytime that you subject medical providers to criminal prosecution and possible jail time, you're gonna decrease access to care.
Access to dead babies. Okay, women who are suffering an infection while they're pregnant, like Rick Santorum's wife, that her water broke and there was amniotic fluid and there was infection in the uterus and they induced labor. Okay, you're allowed to provide actual medical care. You're just not allowed to, oh my God, she's got this uterine infection, so let's poke a bunch of sharp instruments there and see if we maybe can't get some lacerations going so the infection goes straight into her bloodstream. This whole thing is absurd on its face, and nobody's challenging them on it.
And you're going to overburden the healthcare system.
Gonzalez tells me she's bracing for a wave of medical malpractice lawsuits, and not just from pregnant women who are denied emergency care.
Again, there's no need to deny them emergency care. Denying them, it's like that doctor in Ireland who, the young woman Savita came in, her water had broken, she was having a miscarriage, she had an infection, and he did not give her antibiotics and claimed that he wasn't allowed to treat her until the baby was dead. There's never been a law saying you can't give pregnant women antibiotics if the fetus is alive. So the degree to which they are lying is just staggering. And the fact that these doctors are pulling a stunt like that doctor did in Ireland, where they're refusing to provide perfectly legal care to these women because it's more important for them to score political points and scare the women into thinking that they're not allowed to provide care. You're allowed to provide care. That doctor could have given that woman antibiotics, and he chose not to, and he let her die.
And what happens when we have an overwhelmed healthcare system, right? There's going to be overworked doctors, understaffed hospitals. That is the perfect condition for medical errors to happen.
How is you're not allowed to endanger the mother in order to assure that the baby is dead going to overload the healthcare system? How is practicing good medicine instead of subjecting this woman to additional risks going to overwhelm the healthcare system? Subjecting patients to additional needless risks it further overloads the healthcare system. Where you could have just induced labor, now you're dealing with something where you poked a hole in her uterus and she's going septic. I think that's a lot harder for the healthcare system to deal with than just inducing labor.
And that, Gonzalez says, could make healthcare more expensive for everyone as insurance companies pass the legal costs on to policyholders and there's less access to preventative health care.
Why would there be less access to preventative health care? How do you get from you're not allowed to kill the baby to we're not allowed to provide preventative care?
To address the dangers of what it calls, quote, a deeply dishonest scare campaign.
What they are doing is a deeply dishonest scare campaign.
Surrounding the new abortion law, Florida's Agency for Healthcare Administration issued an emergency rule on May 2nd, the day after the 6-week ban took effect. The rule states that ending a pregnancy is allowed to treat complications like ectopic pregnancies or membrane ruptures.
So, yeah, you're allowed to end the pregnancy. End the pregnancy. Why do you want to kill the baby first? Why do you want to subject the woman to the additional risk just to get a dead baby?
Is that helpful to you at all?
No. So here's the challenge. Every pregnancy is unique. Every patient is unique. And they're never going to be able to list every condition.
You don't have to list every condition. Just don't kill the baby. End the pregnancy, and, maybe the baby is very premature and you provide comfort care. Or maybe you thought the baby had some severe disorder and it doesn't, and you just take the baby home and love it. This is nuts.
That sounds clear to me.
But not every OBGYN shares those concerns. Dr. Carice Hudson, who works at a hospital in Fort Myers, opposes abortion, telling me she feels confident in her ability to safely serve patients and step in to save a mother's life if necessary.
In all of those cases, in all of my experience and training, I have never had to separate that baby from the mother prior to viability.
But what do you say to those physicians who say a 6
I have to give them credit for talking to a doctor who's not, the sky is falling if you can't kill sick women's babies.
week ban on abortions in Florida is harmful to women?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I say to my colleagues who think that this is a harmful decision, I let them know the current research on the risks of abortion to women and remind them that our primary goal as OBGYNs is to support women's health.
Hudson cited increased risks of breast cancer and lasting mental health impacts among women who've had abortions.
Did she bring up the possibility that you're doing an abortion on a woman with an infection, you're going to injure her? And they edited it out, or did she not include that?
She provided research from a group called the American Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians and Gynecologists to support those claims. The American Cancer
Notice that when the pro-lifers say something, it's a claim. When the abortion advocates say something, it's a fact. Interesting.
Society says research does not support a link between abortion and cancer, and the American Psychological Association says research shows worse mental health outcomes among women who seek abortions but can't get them.
I'm not even going to open that can of worms. I mean, you know, that's too long. Okay, so that was the whole thing. So basically, we have a bunch of doctors who don't want to walk their patients through a difficult pregnancy. They don't want to risk the birth of a sick baby. They'd rather insure a dead baby. So basically, this is scaremongering. They're trying to scare women into thinking that it's going to be illegal to provide them with necessary care. And I think that's just horrible. I think it's inexcusable.